Miller, your comments are indeed appreciated. Thank you.
Members of the committee, Kathy Mannion, RCRC, representing 34 rural counties, and also here this evening for CSAC, since they cannot be here. We have participated in the discussions regarding the water system consolidation with the administration. We've pointed out numerous issues that need to be addressed. We've offered solutions or things that needed to be investigated, and we regretfully must be here in opposition to this section of the budget trailer bill. It's been mentioned the fact that there would be some monies for infrastructure, but I would just want to point out and emphasize one issue in particular. With the small disadvantaged communities, what the problem is the O&M, the operations and maintenance. You can have infrastructure built, but if the community cannot afford the operations and maintenance, you're at a kind of a dead end. And we have had situations where infrastructure has been built, operated for like a month, and then gone offline. So we really need to address Prop 218. That is a key issue. The administration is aware of that, but has shunted that issue over to the sideline for now. We believe it should be dealt with now, and along with the other multitude of issues and problems that are in this particular proposal and the basic premise of this proposal. So I'll leave it at that, and I concur with the comments of the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mannion.
Danielle Blassett with the California Municipal Utilities Association. Our water members provide resale or wholesale and retail water members serve water to over 70% of Californians, and want to echo appreciation of working with the legislature and the administration on this proposal. However, echoing the comments of my local government water community colleagues, we must regretfully continue to oppose the consolidation language in the bill.
Thank you, Ms. Blasa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, David Jones on behalf of the City of Sacramento. I'll be brief. We'll share the concerns of Aqua and special districts in LAFCO. We think that there are existing processes and the process has not been respected, especially for this sweeping consolidation measure. So we urge you to pull that out. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Chair, members of the committee, we'd like to kind of mention that this is a mixed bag for us. I'd like to echo Mr. Carrillo's comments with regards to consolidation. We fully support consolidation. We are in support of the monitoring requirements and think that overall our water system needs greater management so that we can better control it. We still have concerns regarding the CEQA language. As I mentioned earlier, we're against CEQA exemptions being put in through trailer bills. With regards to these ones specifically, there's the two on recycled water. We support recycled water. We think it's a great step going forward, but that there isn't a lot of public trust for it yet, and that we need to work to build up public's trust in recycled water. That is a safe process, and we just question the wisdom of removing the public from these recycled water projects going forward when we're trying to ask them to support this. We think there is some language in the pipeline piece that could be broad. The term is directly related infrastructure. We'd like to see something along the lines that would limit what directly related infrastructure would include. Also, it calls for mitigation of construction impacts. We don't see why you couldn't just ask that for the pipeline, it just mitigate all impacts associated with it. Additionally, with the local government ordinances, we're cautious of allowing for CEQA exemption for a permanent ordinance during an emergency. We don't know exactly what could go into these ordinances and whether or not a CEQA exemption would be appropriate, and think it would, if we are going to exempt these on an emergency basis, it should be an exemption for a temporary moratoria on new wells and not a full-blown ordinance that would last into the future. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, if you could identify yourself, please.
Oh, Kyle Jones of Sierra Club, California.
Thank you.
Casey Elliott on behalf of Orange County Water District, Mesa Water, and the Municipal Water District of Orange County. We share the concerns previously expressed by the local government members, Aqua, CSDA, Cal LAFCO, regarding the consolidation proposal, and we are opposed to that portion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Richard Harris on behalf of Water Reuse. We are in support of the CEQA section of the bill as it relates to recycled water. We were in support of the governor's proposal. We think that was a better recognition of the value of recycled water and the need for us to act as expeditiously as possible to get more water into the system. But in the spirit of compromise, we will support what's before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Danny Merkley with the California Farm Bureau. In the spirit of brevity, I'll focus on one piece of this that we have a very big concern over, and that's the language for water diversion and use reporting. The Water Board was given 25 PYs in the 2009 Comprehensive Water Package and significant civil penalty authority to deter people that did not report those things. We agree the Water Board needs that information. We agree that that timely submission of that data is necessary, particularly during these drought times, for looking at different watersheds and if curtailments are needed using the seniority water rights system. But they have that authority. They've got the tools to do it. This does not help that situation, and it is not warranted. We believe that specifically that piece needs to be removed from this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merkley.
Valerie Nara for the California Chamber of Commerce. Following in Mr. Merkley's footsteps, we agree with what he said in opposition to the monitoring, but also like to point out that Water Code Section 1846, it was amended last year to apply to drought conditions where the governor issued a drought proclamation. And this bill is eliminating the drought condition language, expanding it for then all conditions. So we are absolutely opposed on those provisions.
Good evening, Margot Parks. On behalf of Family Winemakers of California, want to agree with the statements made before from the Farm Bureau and from the Chamber, and also wanted to comment on a provision that is contained within the section that allows locals to put moratoriums or limit new groundwater wells if there's any sort of change in the use of the land, if that creates new demand on water. We think this provision as a standalone is concerning, doesn't necessarily take into account the entire picture of if you are, if you have a new well for a certain purpose, a certain land use, if that is a draw on the system that's negative, or if there are other reasons why that well might be appropriate. So we think that this provision is concerning and oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Brian Augusta on behalf of the Rural Community Assistance Corporation. Our RCAC provides technical and financial assistance to disadvantaged rural communities like those that would be assisted through the consolidation proposal that has received much discussion so far. We're very supportive of that measure. Our organization has been working in these communities to help disadvantaged communities achieve safe drinking water, providing both technical and financial assistance. But this tool is an important missing tool to helping deliver that. I think it's important to note that the bill does provide both for the State Water Board to consult with the LAFCO, and also provides an opportunity for the affected water systems to try to voluntarily resolve the issue. And I think under those circumstances, it will be the rare instance, but a very necessary instance, where the State Board would force or compel the consolidation so that we ensure that these communities who have long suffered an intractable problem of not being able to achieve safe drinking water, even though there is a system nearby that could help deliver that water at an affordable rate, that in those rare instances, it is appropriate that this new authority be utilized. It will be used judiciously. We've heard the Water Board discuss that. It will be used in those rare instances, but it will be the instance where we can finally, in these communities that have long sought safe drinking water, finally deliver that at affordable rates. And for those reasons, we urge your support. Thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, members, Dan Carrig on behalf of the League of California Cities. First, I just want to say I appreciate and associate myself with the remarks of ACWA, the Special Districts Association, Cal LAFCO, and some of the others. Not going to repeat those. I think it was mentioned earlier in this discussion, and this bill reminds me a little bit of SB 89 of 2011, where in about 6 hours, the cities of California lost their vehicle license fees, and there's been a very traumatic impact that still continues today. One of the things I would put to you is, given this bill's only been in print briefly, is how many of those entities and communities that are actually affected by this bill have no idea it even exists? And if this is a good enough idea, this consolidation, it ought to withstand a little more public scrutiny and let those that are affected have a chance to actually weigh in and work through the details and make sure you actually have a workable law. So we would oppose the bill for those reasons.
Dennis Albiani on behalf of several agricultural organizations, California Seed Association, California Grain and Feed Association, and several others. I want to associate a couple things. One, build on Senator Nielsen's comments. Some of these provisions that are now being made, these extraordinary powers that were given, were not from last year's bill. Some of them were done on this April. So it's basically 75 days later, we are expanding these extraordinary powers and removing the limits that they apply only during drought. And we're actually lowering some of the thresholds from, say, 25 to 10 acre feet, which if you look at an export or an agricultural situation, that's really something that serves 2 acres, 2.5 acres. So those are really extraordinary issues that will be forever that are going on there. So that's something to think about. What I really wanted to discuss is on Section 8 of the bill. It has a provision that Ms. Parks addressed, but I think we really need to get into it because it basically addresses, it has a CEQA exemption for ordinances for local governments when they are addressing wells, and we absolutely believe that local government has the authority to regulate wells, but they also have a discussion that says through stricter conditions on the issuance of well permits or changes in the intensity of land use that would increase demand on groundwater. So as we've spoke with legislative staff and administration officials, we've been assured that that will not affect cropping patterns. And so that's what we've been told. So we want to make sure to get that out in the open. We're actually going to ask for a letter to be submitted if this bill passes, which is your choice to do, or not, to put a letter into the journal that states this does not affect cropping patterns and will not affect cropping patterns. And so we just wanted to get that out there on the elements, because while it does, this section does expire at the end of a drought, it does not, we know how that tends to get, those sunsets tend to get eliminated as this bill does in other provisions. So we just want to get that out there and set that, that letter out.
Can I grab the author there?
Thank you, Mr. Albiani.
Can I ask one thing to Mr. Albiani? Well, Mr. Albiani?
One second, Mr. Nielsen.
There, you don't need to run back
Mr. Senator Nielsen, one moment.
Thank you.
Please. This is an uncommon situation. We don't usually have dialogue with public comment, but because of the expedited nature of this, I want to allow for as minimal as it will be public participation. So for that reason, Senator Nielsen, please take your time with Mr. Albiani.
I will not take time, Mr. Chairman.
No, take your time. Take your time.
I'm interested in authoring that letter as well as the Legislative Council's opinion.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Gail with Western Growers Association, and I do want to align my comments to Mr. Albiani's, especially on Section 8. I do want you to know that we are neutral on the monitoring and reporting language. We did work with the administration on amendments, and we are neutral on that.
Thank you, Gail.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation, here in support of the consolidation proposal. We understand the interests of some in taking more time and having a lengthier process, but I would suggest that while there are families and communities that do not have access to safe water, there really is some urgency here. We think it's extremely important that this be addressed, and we're here in support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vega.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council, also speaking in support of this consolidation proposal and the entire bill. When the legislature was debating the water bond, which we were strong supporters of, we often talked about access to clean and safe, reliable water. In the meantime, we have communities that are going without, that are importing water and have access to poisonous water filled with arsenic. And as we contemplate building dams and building infrastructure, actually supply for the future, there are communities in need now. We believe this proposal actually provides a very thorough analysis of what happens before actual consolidation and actually looks for resolution prior to having that, and that could be the last resort. I think it's important. These are the poorest communities. They don't have representation. They're working families. They're the poorest of the poor. They don't have a voice here. That's why they're not here. But rest assured that they're having their water imported, having to take showers, perhaps even in city centers away from their homes. That's just patently unfair in the largest economy of the United States. So we ask for your support, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. So, colleagues, thank you for bearing with all of this. Public comment is enormously important today, again, given the expedited nature of this particular trailer bill. Senator Roth, you were very patient. We're going to start with you.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment first to my colleagues across the table. We received this morning, too, so we're all in the same boat, but I guess it is what it is. The other comment I wanted to make tied into an earlier remark. This consolidation issue, I'm sure you realize, colleagues, is not necessarily related to the drought. We have communities up and down the state, mostly in the interior of the state, that are dealing with substandard water systems, failing water systems, the inability to secure safe and reliable drinking water. Shortly after I arrived here, I was asked to work on a problem, and it was a problem in southwest Riverside County, an area that is now in my colleague Senator Stone's district, but he was not elected at the time, and the area had no representation. It was outside of my district. It was a small community in the unincorporated area of Riverside County where the residents had insufficient water for their fire hydrants. The water was not drinkable. Adjacent water agencies stepped up to the plate and tankered water in tanker trucks so the folks could get their drinking water in jugs. Those of you who have been traveling outside the United States know that these are essentially third world conditions, and that's exactly what they were. Certainly the State Water Board could appoint a receiver and take over a system, but take over what system? A system that barely delivered water to the houses and not virtually at all to the fire hydrants, water that was essentially undrinkable. And I can tell you that this was a very difficult issue to work through this House. Issues of liability, issues of cost of improving a system that was completely unsatisfactory. And I can also tell you that neither existing law nor the LAFCO process, frankly, was helpful at all to me or to those here who were helping me. Fortunately, two adjacent water agencies stepped up to the plate. They didn't have to. No law required them to do so. The State Board, as I recall, could not compel them to do so. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But they stepped up and they agreed to help this community by connecting to the system, improving the system on their own, and providing good, safe drinking water to the residents of this community. So I wanted to compliment the administration for stepping up with this issue in the way that they did. The issues that appear to be dealt with in this bill, the cost of improving the system, the liability issues, indemnification, which were key issues that we had to grapple with in working through that bill for that very, very small community, appear to be dealt with. It's not a perfect bill, but it appears to be a good start, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you for your comments, Senator Roth.